Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told how to voice radio. So today, I'm going to show you how Gardevoir just won the Pokemon Trading Card Game World Championships. And if you're thinking, hang on a second, Ross, hasn't the World Championships final just finished? Why, yes. Yes, it has. I did it last year, and ladies and gentlemen, I think I might make a habit of it. Diego Casaraga just, and I'm sorry for my pronunciation here, became the world champion. He played Gardevoir, so I thought, you know what? It's time to show you about this Gardevoir deck. Now, it all revolves around the new Gardevoir that came out in the most recent expansion, Burning Shadows. Interesting, of course, because World started on the Friday, which was the very first day that Gardevoir GX was legal for tournament play. It's a Stage 2 GX, but as we're going to see, we got plenty of options for getting that out. It's got the ability Secret Spring that can allow you to attach an extra fairy energy per turn, and for one fairy energy minimum, you do 30 damage for every energy attached to Gardevoir and the defending Pokemon. And of course, with Secret Spring, you could attach a fairy. You could then attach a double colorless as your attachment for the turn. And then, of course, if you're facing down an EX or a GX Pokemon, you can add a choice band as well to do a little bit of extra damage. And let's not forget that if you've got multiple Gardevoir out, you can use multiple Secret Spring. The weakness to metal is kind of irrelevant. Metagross did see a bit of hype going into the World Championships. There were a few people that played Volcanion Fire Center decks, which may have scared Metagross off. But honestly, there was very, very little word of Metagross all weekend, which basically meant Gardevoir got to go through the whole tournament without having to worry about any of that weakness malarkey. Although some of the Gardevoir decks did tech in some Flareon to further scare away said Metagross. Now, Gardevoir also does have Twilight GX as its GX attack. It allows you to get 10 cards from your discard pile back into your deck. Slightly scary because in the late game it can clog your deck up a little bit, but it means that in the early game you can discard whatever you want, knowing you can get it back. And of course, with one of the really big decks, and by big I mean it was 6 of the top 8 decks, being Gardevoir, the ability to get all of your item cards back into your deck from your discard pile meant that in the late game you could really lower Gardevoir's damage output. Although do remember, of course, that if you put a bunch of random trainers back into your deck, then a late game end could see you drawing those trainers and could be bad news. Now, Diego did choose to go for Octillery as a support Pokemon rather than Oranguru. Octillery is a Stage 1, Oranguru is a basic, but of course you get to draw an extra 2 cards. I'm a huge fan of Octillery. I've been saying for a while that Octillery is the way to go. It looks like a lot of the players this weekend agreed with me, although let's be clear, I wasn't the one, having a deep run at the World Championships. It was these guys. But still, Octillery did seem to be the play. Being able to draw every turn was really good. There was a lot of Garbodor out there blocking abilities, which was a slight shame, but late game ends, even early game pressure, Octillery really was the way to go. Now, in terms of setup Pokemon, you've got 2 choices for Gardevoir, and Diego actually chose to use both of them. Now, as a side note here, I don't have Diego's exact list, but he was on stream a couple of times throughout the weekend, and I have been able to have a very good look through his deck, so I can't give you the exact list, but I can tell you what he played. He played Alolan Vulpix, and he played Diancie. Alolan Vulpix for 0 energy has the attack Beacon, which allows you to search for 2 Pokemon. What I really love about Alolan Vulpix is in the early game you're likely to be using Bridget to search out your Pokemon, but pretty much everything in your deck has a retreat cost of 1. Your Remoraid, your Ralts, your Tapu Lele. So when you bridge it, you can search for an Alolan Vulpix, and as long as you've got a single energy in hand, you can retreat whatever's in the active, and then use Beacon. Search for those evolution Pokemon like Octillery, Kirlia, and Gardevoir, and start getting set up from turn 2. Now, at first glance, Diancie looks like a better option. Diancie allows you to actually search your deck for a Pokemon and immediately evolve one of your bench. You can evolve your routes into a Kirlia, and don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, that then that Kirlia will be on your bench to start your next turn, so you can immediately evolve up into a Gardevoir, or you can evolve your Remoraid straight into an Octillery. Why Alolan Vulpix if Diancie is so good? Because if you've got to use an energy to retreat your active Pokemon into Diancie, you then cannot use an energy to use Sparkling Wish on Diancie, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is a little bit of a shame. If you don't start with Diancie, there's a very good chance you're not going to be able to use it. I believe Diego actually went for a 1-1 split. Diego did also, of course, go for Gallade, a really good Pokemon, because it also evolves from Kirlia. Gardevoir is your main attacker, but Gallade has Premonition that allows you to look at the top 5 cards of your deck and rearrange them. And don't forget, of course, you've then got Octillery, so if you can only draw one card with Octillery, you can use Gallade to control which card you actually end up drawing. But don't be sleeping on the attack-sensitive Blade, 130 for a double colourless, and you'll be playing double colourless, as long as you've played a supporter that turn. And of course, it does give you weakness on Durampa, which did really have a good showing this year, and did come up in the top cut as well. The only other Pokemon that Diego played here was our old friend Tapu Lele. The attack is fine, allowing you to do 20 damage for each energy attached to both active Pokemon, but really here it's the ability Wonder Tag, allowing you to search out all of your supporters. Speaking of supporters here, there were several that were incredibly useful for Diego as he went through his run at the World Championships. Acerola is a great card that just allows you to pick up a damaged Pokemon. Gardevoir GX has 230 HP. If your opponent doesn't get a one-hit KO, you can pick it up and you don't discard the energy. Now, you do cost yourself the evolution. You've got to bench your routes and then start evolving up again. Similarly, you lose all of those energy attachments and have to start from scratch, but it stops your opponent taking 2 prizes off of your Gardevoir, and that has got to be a good thing. Similarly, Hex Maniac saw play in Diego's list, and Hex Maniac just helps in so many decks. Firstly, it helps in the mirror match against other Gardevoir decks, because between Gallade, Octillery and Gardevoir, and Tapu Lele, you are really relying on abilities yourself. If you can take a KO while playing Hex Maniac, your opponent may be unable to get a return KO because they can't use Secret Spring. But it also helps you in matchups like Metagross, like Volcanion, like Decidueye, etc, etc. Bridget is an absolutely crucial card. You play it turn 1, you search out your routes, you search out your Remoraid. It is absolutely crucial, although maybe also Alolan Vulpix and Diancie. Guzma was another one of these cards like Acerola that came around in Burning Shadows, and it's Lysander. But it's also a switch, which means that you can control your active Pokemon a little bit better. Sometimes you've got a Pokemon in the active and you just want to Lysander, but far more often you need to switch as well, and that's where Guzma comes in. Being able to select which Pokemon you KO on your opponent's side of the field is absolutely crucial. You've got to play Guzma for that. And in terms of non-supporter trainer cards, Field Blower was absolutely huge for Diego here. Now, first of all, you can get rid of stuff like Fighting Fury Belt, like Floatstone, like Choice Band. But the main use here is getting rid of the tool on Garbodor, because, of course, he turns off your abilities. And as I've already mentioned, this deck was really reliant on abilities, so you had to make sure that you could get your abilities back when you needed it. And although you've got Twilight GX to get cards back into your deck, you have to play Rescue Stretcher and Super Rod here. Super Rod's good because you can recover either Pokemon or energy, free in any combination thereof, basic energy only. But Rescue Stretcher here is good because you can grab a Pokemon from your discard straight into your hand. You might have a Curlier on the bench. That means you can play a Rescue Stretcher, grab that Gardevoir, and immediately evolve. Whereas if you just played a Super Rod, you'd have to wait and hope you drew into it. In terms of energy, obviously there was Fairy Energy, that should go without saying, but it seemed like he was playing a single copy of Wonder Energy. Now, Wonder Energy is usually played as a one-off in these Gardevoir decks, and it stops effects of attacks, except damage, done to a fairy Pokemon that has Wonder Energy attached. So things like Drampa cannot discard it, or any of your double colourless energy, which is incredibly handy. It means Garbodor's Acid Spray cannot get rid of your energy. It means Espeon cannot confuse you. And all of these Pokemon were popular this weekend, and all of these Pokemon did feature in the top 8. Now, there were a couple of cards that Diego didn't play. He chose to play 0 stadiums, at least as far as I could see. Some people in Gardevoir choose to play Fairy Garden, just to get that free retreat on your Pokemon with Fairy Energy attached. Personally, I'm more of a fan of Silent Lab, turning off abilities of basic Pokemon, which helps in the Volcanion matchup, but really here it's for Tapu Lele and Shaymin. But it means you can't play other cards, and I think Diego here really just wanted other cards that helped his matchups more. Similarly, it seems like he chose not to play Max Potion, given that 6 of the 8 decks in Top Cut featured Garbodor, and Garbodor does extra damage for every item card in your discard pile. It's maybe not surprising that he shied away from item cards like this. Now, in terms of the other big decks, really, in Top Cut, other than Gardevoir, it was just Garbodor. And you can hit quite easily here. Free energy, you get a one-hit KO. Plus, you can use Twilight GX to get all of your item cards back. It does seem to have an exceptionally favourable matchup. Now, some decks play it with Espeon, but then you're doing a lot more damage than Espeon is, and they're generally going to have free energy attached. And if they try and confuse you and you've got Wonder Energy, it does nothing. Similarly, Drampa can hit for decent energy, but needs free energy cards attached to it, which means if you've got free energy, or 2 on a choice band, you'll be getting a one-hit KO on Drampa. Gardevoir has a very good Garbodor matchup, and that is one of the reasons it went through all the way to the final here, given that, of course, it was a very Garbodor-heavy format. Now, there was also quite a lot of Decidueye this weekend, where Hexmaniac comes in incredibly useful, as does your big damage, and similarly Volcanion, it's all about Hexmaniac and big damage, but Volcanion, Turtonator, Ho-Oh, they all stash a bunch of energy on themselves. Gardevoir takes big KOs. And then, of course, there is Golisopod, which is probably the most difficult matchup this weekend for Gardevoir, because those decks play a high Acerola count, because they only have a single energy and 210 HP. It is very difficult for Gardevoir, but then again, ladies and gentlemen, as long as you can use your own Acerola, and as long as you can build up to a big KO, if you get enough energy attached to Gardevoir, you will beat Golisopod. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how Gardevoir was able to come home this weekend with the title of World Champion. And if you're wondering if in future years I'm planning to do these analysis of the winning decks the second the final ends, yes, I am. 2 years down, X years to go. Make sure you like this video if you want me to keep doing this. Subscribe to this channel. Follow me on Twitter at TheWassy and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus pods, etc., check it out at patreon.com/PTCGRadio. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.